Stop. Right now, you're making yourself worthless. Every time you answer immediately, every time you're available when someone calls, every time you say yes before they finish asking. You're not being kind, you're not being helpful, you're training people to treat you like you don't matter. And here's the brutal truth Machiavelli understood 500 years ago. The more accessible you are, the less valuable you become. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly appreciated you being there? They didn't. They expected it. Because you've made yourself so available that your presence means nothing. The world operates on a principle most people refuse to accept. Scarcity creates value. Abundance destroys it. This isn't just philosophy. It's human psychology. It's economics. It's the foundation of every power structure that has ever existed. Machiavelli saw this pattern everywhere. Leaders who made themselves too accessible lost authority. Advisors who were always available became ignored. The moment something becomes easy to obtain, it loses all meaning. In the next 25 minutes, you're going to learn 8 ruthless truths about accessibility and power. These aren't comfortable lessons. They're not what society tells you, but they're what works in the real world where perception shapes reality and scarcity commands respect. I need you to drop this affirmation in the comments. My time is not free. Let's begin. Number 1. Constant availability signals low value. When you're always available, people assume you have nothing better to do. And when they think you have nothing better to do, they treat your time as worthless. This is basic human psychology. We assign value based on scarcity. The harder something is to get, the more we want it. The easier something is to access, the less we appreciate it. Think about the most respected people in your life. They're not the ones who answer every text immediately or show up to every event. They're selective. They're strategic. They understand that their presence must be earned, not expected. Machiavelli once said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." People respond to what appears valuable, not what actually is valuable. And constant availability appears desperate. When someone can reach you anytime, they stop valuing your time. When they know you'll always say yes, they stop appreciating your help. When they understand you'll always be there, they stop respecting your presence. This is why the busiest people get more opportunities, not because they're actually better, but because their scarcity makes them seem more valuable. Their limited availability creates mystery. Their selective presence creates desire. Every time you respond instantly, you're saying, "I was just waiting for you." Every time you're immediately available, you're communicating, "I have nothing more important." Every time you say yes without hesitation, you're demonstrating that your standards are low. And people notice. They might not consciously think about it, but their behavior changes. They start taking longer to respond to you. They start canceling plans. They start treating your time as less valuable than theirs, because you taught them to. Constant availability doesn't make you dependable. It makes you disposable. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose strategic presence. Number 2. Scarcity creates psychological desire. There's a reason luxury brands limit production. There's a reason exclusive clubs have waiting lists. There's a reason the most powerful people are the hardest to reach. We want what we can't easily have. This isn't manipulation. This is psychology. When something is scarce, our brains assign it higher value. When something is abundant, our brains dismiss it as ordinary. Machiavelli wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Power shifts based on availability and necessity. When a leader is always accessible, they lose mystique. When they become selective, they regain control. Think about someone who used to text you constantly, then suddenly became busy. Their messages became rare. What happened to your perception? You started wondering what they're doing. You started valuing their attention more. You started seeking their approval. Nothing about them actually changed except their availability. But your entire perception shifted because scarcity triggered desire. This is why playing hard to get works. Why limited time offers create urgency. Why the friend who's always busy seems more interesting than the friend who's always free. Scarcity doesn't just create value, it creates obsession. Most people are terrified of being scarce. They think if they're not constantly available, people will forget them. The opposite is true. When you become scarce, people pay attention. When you stop being everywhere, they notice where you are. The psychology is simple. Humans are loss-averse. We fear missing out more than we enjoy gaining access. When something is always available, there's no fear of loss. When something becomes limited, suddenly it matters. This is why the person who left early is more memorable than the person who stayed late. Why the email answered in 3 days feels more important than one answered in 3 minutes. Why the friend you see occasionally means more than the friend you see daily. Scarcity forces people to recognize value they were taking for granted. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My presence is a privilege, not a right. Number 3, always being there trains people to expect it. When you do something consistently, it stops being appreciated and starts being expected. Your exceptional kindness becomes baseline behavior. Your constant availability becomes the standard. And the moment you can't meet that standard, you become the villain. You always respond within minutes. Then one day, you take an hour. The other person gets annoyed. Not because an hour is unreasonable, but because you trained them to expect instant responses. You always help when asked. Then one day, you say you're busy. They get upset. Not because you're selfish, but because your availability became their entitlement. This is the trap of consistency without boundaries. Every time you show up, you raise the expectation. Every time you say yes, saying no becomes harder. Every time you're available, being unavailable becomes a betrayal. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Dependability without boundaries creates dependency, and dependency breeds resentment, not respect. When people become dependent on your availability, they stop seeing you as generous. They start seeing you as obligated. Your help is no longer a gift, it's a debt you owe. The employee who always stays late, the friend who always makes time, the partner who always compromises. Their consistency doesn't earn appreciation. It sets an unsustainable standard that eventually breaks them. And when you finally set a boundary, people don't understand. They don't think they must be overwhelmed. They think they're being selfish, because you conditioned them to expect unlimited access. This is why setting boundaries early is crucial. When you're selective from the beginning, people learn to respect your limits. When you demonstrate that your time is valuable, they treat it as valuable. Your availability teaches people how to treat you. When you're always there, you teach them your time is worthless. When you're selective, you teach them your time is precious. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I set the terms of my availability. Number 4, strategic absence increases your influence. Power isn't built by being everywhere. It's built by being somewhere important at the right moment. The person who shows up to everything fades into background. The person who appears selectively commands attention. This is the principle of strategic absence. By being deliberately unavailable at certain times, you make your presence more impactful when you do appear. Think about leaders, celebrities, experts. They're not constantly accessible. They don't respond to every request. They don't attend every event. And that selective presence makes their appearance more meaningful. When someone knows you're not always available, they pay more attention when you are. When they understand you're selective about your time, they value the time you give. When they realize access to you is limited, they stop taking that access for granted. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Perception is shaped by scarcity. The less people have of you, the more they imagine about you. That imagination builds your mystique. Strategic absence also protects you from burnout. When you're everywhere, doing everything, helping everyone, you drain yourself. You become resentful. Your quality decreases, your energy fades. But when you're selective, when you conserve your energy for what matters, you show up stronger. Your presence has weight, your words carry impact, your actions create results. The most influential people understand this instinctively. They don't respond to every email immediately because instant responses train people to expect immediate availability. They don't attend every meeting because constant presence dilutes authority. They don't say yes to every request because unlimited accessibility destroys value. People start talking about them when they're not there. They start wondering what they're doing. They start valuing interactions more because those interactions are rare. This is the paradox of influence. The less available you are, the more impact you have. The more selective you become, the more people want access. The more you withdraw, the more they lean in. Absence must be purposeful, not petty. It must communicate value, not avoidance. It must create desire, not confusion. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My absence speaks louder than others' presence. Number 5. Immediate responses signal desperation. Speed is not a virtue in communication. Responding instantly doesn't make you efficient. It makes you appear desperate. Think about the psychology of an immediate response. It says, I was waiting for this. I had nothing more important to do. Your message was my priority. That might sound flattering, but it's a display of low value. The person who responds immediately signals they're not busy, not important, not in demand. They're available because nobody else needs them. And that perception shapes how others treat them. Machiavelli said, the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. But he was talking about decision-making, not response times. When it comes to communication, taking time signals thoughtfulness, not foolishness. When you take time to respond, you communicate several things. That you have priorities beyond this conversation, that you're thoughtful about your response, that your attention is valuable, not freely given. This doesn't mean playing games or being rude. It means recognizing that immediate availability trains people to expect constant accessibility, and constant accessibility destroys perceived value. The most respected people don't respond instantly. They take hours, sometimes days, not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're genuinely busy with things that matter. And that busyness signals importance. When you respond too quickly, you rob the other person of appreciating your response. Instant gratification is quickly forgotten. A response that comes after some time carries weight. The weight makes it meaningful. The consultant who responds within minutes seems desperate for work. The consultant who takes a day to respond seems in demand. Same person, same message, completely different perception. Immediate responses also prevent strategic thinking. When you answer instantly, you often answer emotionally. You haven't had time to consider the best response. You haven't processed what's being asked. Taking time allows you to respond from strength rather than reaction. It gives you space to think, to strategize, to craft a response that serves your interests. Machiavelli understood that timing is everything. The right action at the wrong time is still the wrong action. By controlling your response time, you control the narrative. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I respond on my timeline, not theirs. Number 6. Selectivity creates exclusivity. When you say yes to everything, your yes means nothing. When you say yes to the right things, your yes becomes gold. This is the principle of selectivity. By being choosy about where you invest your time, energy, and presence, You transform yourself from common to exclusive. Think about exclusive clubs, luxury brands, respected institutions. They don't let everyone in. Their selectivity is precisely what makes them desirable. The harder something is to access, the more people want it. The same applies to you. When you're selective about who gets your time becomes valuable. When you're choosy about invitations, your presence becomes an honor. When you're careful about commitments, your commitment becomes meaningful. Machiavelli wrote, "Since it is difficult to join them together, it is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking." Selectivity creates respectful awareness that access to you is not guaranteed. Most people are terrified of being selective. They think saying no will make them seem difficult or arrogant, but the opposite is true. Saying yes to everything makes you seem desperate and without standards. When you're selective, people understand that earning your time means something. They rise to meet your standards. They work to deserve your investment. They appreciate what they get because they know it's not given freely. This doesn't mean being cruel. It means having criteria, knowing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Understanding that not every opportunity is worth taking, not every person deserves unlimited access. Selectivity also protects your quality. When you spread yourself thin by saying yes to everything, your performance suffers. But when you focus on select commitments, you can excel. The person who attends every networking event becomes forgettable. The person who attends 3 carefully chosen events becomes memorable, because their presence is intentional and valuable. Selectivity transforms you from abundant to scarce, from common to exclusive, from accessible to aspirational, and that transformation changes how the world treats you. Standards aren't elitist, they're self-respect. When you have standards for what deserves your time, you signal that you value yourself. And when you value yourself, others follow suit. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose quality over quantity in everything. Number 7. Distance prevents emotional manipulation. One of the most powerful benefits of strategic unavailability is protection from manipulation. When you're constantly accessible, you're constantly vulnerable to emotional exploitation. Manipulators thrive on immediate access. They need you available so they can create urgency, apply pressure, and extract commitments before you have time to think. Distance destroys their primary weapon. Think about high-pressure sales tactics. They all rely on immediate decision-making. This offer expires today. I need an answer now. Don't think, just act. Why? Because thinking breaks the spell. Time reveals manipulation. When you create distance through strategic unavailability, you give yourself space to evaluate. Is this request legitimate or manipulative? Is this urgency real or manufactured? Am I being respected or exploited? Machiavelli said, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." Manipulators understand this. They don't force you, they deceive you into volunteering, and that deception requires access. When someone can't reach you immediately, they can't manipulate you impulsively. When you don't respond instantly, they can't pressure you effectively. When you take time to consider, you see through their tactics. This is why boundaries are so important. They're not just about respect, they're about protection. When you're always available, you're always exposed. When you create barriers, you create safety. Distance also prevents emotional contagion. When someone is in crisis, constant contact transfers that chaos to you. Their anxiety becomes yours, their urgency becomes yours, their problems become yours. But when you maintain strategic distance, you can help from stability rather than getting dragged into dysfunction. You can offer support without being consumed. You can care without being controlled. Many people confuse availability with compassion. They think being constantly accessible makes them a better friend or partner. but actually, it makes them an easier target. The most effective helpers aren't those who are always available. They're those who are available strategically at moments when their help actually matters, because they preserved their energy by not being constantly drained. When you're too accessible, people learn they can bypass your boundaries with urgency. But when you've established that you're not always available, these tactics lose power. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My boundaries protect my peace. Number 8. Scarcity is the foundation of all power. Everything valuable in this world shares one characteristic: scarcity. Gold is valuable because it's rare. Time is precious because it's limited. Expertise matters because few have it. And you become valuable the same way, not by being everywhere, but by being somewhere that matters. Not by being available to everyone, but by being accessible to the worthy. This is Machiavelli's ultimate lesson about power. It's not distributed equally. It's concentrated strategically. And the moment you make yourself abundant, you dilute your power. Think about every power structure that exists. Governments control access to rights. Companies control access to products. Individuals control access to their time. That control creates the scarcity that generates value. When you remove scarcity, you remove value. This is why unlimited anything becomes worthless. Unlimited money causes inflation. Unlimited access causes indifference. Unlimited availability causes disrespect. Machiavelli wrote, "Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great." Scarcity creates motivation. When something is easy to obtain, nobody tries hard to get it. When something is difficult to access, people prove themselves worthy. By making yourself scarce, you force people to demonstrate their worthiness of your time. You create a natural filter. Those who truly value you will respect your boundaries. Those who don't will reveal themselves by complaining about your unavailability. Scarcity also compounds. The more scarce you become, the more valuable you appear. The more valuable you appear, the more selective you can be. The more selective you are, the more scarce you become. It's an upward spiral, but this only works if you maintain it consistently. The moment you become freely available again, the illusion shatters. People remember that you're not actually scarce, just pretending to be. True scarcity comes from genuine priorities. You're not available because you're focused on things that matter. You're not immediately responsive because you're deeply engaged in meaningful work. You're not always accessible because you value your time and energy. This authenticity makes the scarcity real. And real scarcity creates real power. Your scarcity must be chosen, not circumstantial. It must come from strength, not weakness. It must signal value, not unavailability. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. My scarcity is my power. We've covered 8 ruthless truths about accessibility and power. But let me leave you with the most important understanding. This isn't about being cruel. It's not about playing games. It's about recognizing your fundamental value as a human being. Understanding that your time, your energy, your presence are finite resources that deserve respect. Machiavelli lived in a world where understanding human nature meant the difference between success and destruction. And what he learned 5 centuries ago still applies today. The world hasn't changed. People still assign value based on scarcity. They still take abundance for granted. They still respect what's difficult to obtain and dismiss what's easily accessible. The only question is whether you'll continue making yourself freely available, training people to devalue you, or whether you'll embrace strategic scarcity and reclaim your power. Every time you respond instantly, you choose to appear desperate. Every time you're always available, you choose to seem unimportant. Every time you say yes without consideration, you choose to be taken for granted. But every time you take your time, you choose to appear valuable. Every time you're selectively available, you choose to seem important. Every time you say no strategically, you choose to be respected. Machiavelli once said, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves." One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Be the fox in recognizing when your availability is being exploited. Be the lion in protecting your time and energy. And be strategic enough to know when to show up and when to stay away. Your accessibility is not kindness. Your boundaries are not cruelty. Your scarcity is not selfishness. They're self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of all power. If this message resonated, hit that like button. Subscribe for more Machiavellian wisdom and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with which lesson hit you hardest. Tell me which pattern you've been trapped in and how you're going to break free. Stop being accessible. Start being scarce. And watch how the world suddenly starts treating you like you matter. Because you do. You always did. You just forgot to act like it.